Let's get back here to our set where we welcome our guest host this morning, Texas Congressman and Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul. Dr. Paul, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Very nice to be with you.
Can you give us an update on where the campaign stands right now?
Yeah, we had a pretty good weekend. There were some caucuses meeting and delegate selections, and in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, we got 20 out of 24 of the delegates, and in Missouri, there were 20 out of 40 that we got. In Iowa, there was a meeting that was held to select the steering committee. There are 17 members of the steering committee. We got 15 out of the 17, and we have the chairman of the party in Iowa. And this type of activity is going on around the country, so it doesn't get the attention that we think it deserves. But I think the campaign's going very well. A lot of people like to write us off and say, why are you there? Why are you doing these things? Well, the market tells me that we're doing pretty well because the crowds get bigger, the money keeps coming in, the enthusiasm grows. We can get up to 8,000 people on college campuses. Yesterday, in very, very bad weather in Philadelphia, we had almost 4,500 people show up and stood in the rain for 2-3 hours. So the enthusiasm is there, the money is there. We're making inroads in the structure of the Republican Party. And the one thing everybody's agreeing on is something has to be done in this country. They're very unhappy with the way things are going around the world, in this country, monetarily, financially, debt, this whole problem.
Is that what the campaign is about? Meaning, from a practical perspective, the polls would suggest that the chances of winning are very, very low, if not impossible. Is this not about winning so much as about changing the debate?
Why can't it be both? People want to say, people have a trouble seeing a candidate that really believes in something, and the goal is to move that, and therefore he doesn't want to win, or his goal isn't to win. I mean, this is what I did in the congressional races. I mean, people wrote me off, and I won 12 times. But it was always on the beliefs that I had, and winning the election was the endorsement. So yes, you run to win. If you win, you really get the endorsement. If you do well, you get some endorsement. But there is certainly no doubt, I don't shy away from the fact that it has a lot to do with changing the nature of the debate. I mean, if you don't change the nature of the debate, you can't tinker with the budget. This is why nothing's happening in Washington, because there's no philosophic discussion. Both party leaders endorse the same foreign policy. They endorse the same monetary policy. They really don't care about spending and debt. Republicans say, well, we're going to balance the budget in 30 years. I want to cut $1 trillion and balance it in 3 years. I want to change the monetary system so that politicians can't get away with spending and getting their debt taken care of by the Federal Reserve. So this is a big difference. But this is what the young people know this. They know what's coming on, and they're rallying because they're inheriting this mess. Besides, they've been sucked into the system too. They ended up with tens of thousands of dollars of debt, $1 trillion of student debt, and they can't get jobs. So they know structurally there's something wrong. So it's a philosophic argument more so than a political argument.
So do you still believe you can get enough delegates to win the Republican nomination?
Oh, theoretically you can. It's not likely, but you can't ever tell. Nobody knew that Santorum was going to drop out last week, but only about a little over half the votes have been counted. When we come up with Texas and California, another third of the votes are yet to be counted. So you don't know. But in theory, you can. In practical counting, I think we're very realistic. But the one thing that is not practical and not realistic for the supporters who have encouraged me to do this would be to say, well, we're in the third lap of a mile race, and we're behind. Oh, okay, let's just walk off the field. That's the way they would see that. You don't quit because you happen to be behind. You want to see how you do, and who knows, maybe somebody will stumble. You can't ever tell.
Santorum dropped out.
In theory, you can win. The likelihood, of course, is obvious.
Well, Santorum dropped out because he did not think he could eventually win. Are you in this to the end, or are you in this until there's not a mathematical chance, or where do you see the end conclusion? Will you take this all the way?
Of course, I decided as we go along, if tomorrow Romney had the absolute number, I would probably continue in a modified way to maximize the number of delegates to go to that convention. They have worked so hard like 6 months or 2 years. It's been for 4 years they have been working. I mean, there's some states we've had 10 and 20 new state representatives and state senators involved. And for us to say, well, we don't want a presence, we're going to give up, we're going to maximize the delegates. Even a lot of the delegates where the delegates are required to vote for Romney, they're our supporters, but they're going to be there and they'll have an influence. They'll have something to do with the platform. So it's a much than anybody realizes, and I think I go by now. Ordinarily, in an ordinary campaign, if you get in and say, well, it looks like Romney's going to win, you don't get any money, you end up with debt, and you don't get any crowds out. I mean, the other candidates, I mean, they're not going to get these thousands and thousands of people coming out on the campus. So the market's telling me that this campaign is very, very viable for two reasons. One, they want to win if we can. They want to maximize the delegates, and they do want to have an impact. I mean, that is very important to every single supporter.
Is Romney a flawed candidate in your opinion?
Well, I think the system is so flawed, and I think all the other candidates and all the Democrats are, deeply flawed philosophically because they've been taught by the same economists. They've all endorsed a foreign policy which is deeply flawed, and their understanding and need to follow the Constitution is quite different. So I think the Congress, the system is deeply flawed, and they endorse interventionism, Keynesian economics, paper money.
But how about Mitt Romney? How about Mitt Romney?
I think he's part of that whole crowd of politicians, Republicans and Democrats, that are much closer together than most people realize.
Does that mean
not that much difference when you come to policy? Rhetoric might be different, but just think, we get the Republicans in, and what do? You get double the size of the Department of Education. You get more medical government medicine. So this is why young people are so disgusted.
Romney has actually said that he would cut back on
and they don't get what they're supposed to get. Pardon me?
Romney had said, I think just last week, that he would cut back the Department of Education, not get rid of it, but to cut back on its size.
Yeah, but the Republicans have hinted to that for 30, 40 years, and they've never done a thing. I think the difference is they know I'm serious.
Why don't you run as an independent candidate if the system is that flawed?
Well, I've been a Republican. I won as a Republican for 12 years, and I convinced Republicans and independents. Matter of fact, when I first started running, it wasn't a Republican district, so I had to convince Democrats and independents. By the way, that's where our support is, and that's why we seem to come up short, in the Republican primary, because our support is tremendous. When you put my name up against Obama, I can do better than Romney. But you don't hear that. Nobody talks about that. But it's been on Rasmussen this last weekend. I was 1 point higher, and Romney was essentially tied or 1 point behind.
But you haven't won a state in 3 attempts in running for the presidential nomination. You haven't won a state. Why is that? When you have such a strong support base, why not win any states?
Because sometimes they're independents and sometimes they're Democrats, and they feel pretty uncomfortable going to a Republican primary. But winning a state right now is getting out of the state and dominating that caucus, and that's still up for grabs. Just like I said, Minneapolis, Maine, we still have a chance, and as well as Nevada, Alaska, we had the votes there to dominate, and they just locked the doors. They kept us out, and they're fighting that battle now. They did that 4 years ago in Nevada, and a year or so later they admitted they did it. And they found the documents that showed that we had the votes to take over the convention, but they didn't want us to. So, yes, we're challenged in the status quo of the entire country as well as the Republican Party, and people don't like to give up their power. But the momentum is very powerful. I'm part of it, but I'm not it. It's much bigger than me, I'll tell you.